The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to the Happiness Jungle TV show. I am your guest host, Cami Baker. I am the resident queen of the jungle today, and I am super excited to have yet another queen at the table with me. This is Miss Catherine Storing. Catherine and I met at an event, oh gosh, about a year and a half ago, and she is a storytelling queen. And our topic today is going to be about how we tell stories, good ones and bad ones, and how they affect our lives. Catherine, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And I love that you just promoted me to queen. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, so I'm a storyteller, and I've been doing that my whole entire life, and I didn't know. And we all do that. We all tell stories. And I happen to put mine in books, and I help other people do that as well. I've written about 15 books, and I'm a ghostwriter, and that's what I enjoy doing, putting stories together for people.
So tell us a little bit about your version of the stories that we're telling ourselves and why that it actually changes our life, or it actually dictates our life. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And there's so many things that we're not aware of that are scripts that we learned and that we didn't even know that they were told to us. And for example, growing up, my parents told me that I was smart. So I took that for gospel. I'm smart. So whenever I have to learn something new, whether a software or a tool or a concept, my mind already tells me, piece of cake, you got it, you could do it.
Nice.
So it's just great, right? So I'm happy with that. But then on the flip side of that, they also told me that I could be smart but not creative. So whenever I try to draw something, whenever I try to use my creative skills, I fall flat because I'm listening to that story that more than 30 years ago, right? We're not going to say exactly how many, but I believed that I was not creative until I interrupted that story. And I said, wait a minute, what is the evidence? The evidence is, when I roll back the tape, I have done many creative things. And I get to be smart and creative at the same time.
Well, here on the Happiness Jungle, we're always helping people to live a happier life. And this makes me think of the things that have been said to me and the stories that I've been told or that I tell in my head. I remember when I was in high school, I used to have an underbite. I had a little bit of corrective surgery. But I remember kids saying that I had a ski slope nose and I looked like a bulldog and things like that. So the bad stories can really affect us too. I want to get your input because you're an expert on storytelling. My daughter, I have told her her whole life, you can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to. However, at the ripe old age of 19, she won't try anything. So your parents got it through your head that you could do anything, that you were smart. What can we as parents do to help our children step into a more powerful way of being?
Yeah, I love that. So one of the things that I would say for your daughter is look at the evidence. What has she done before? And don't make a big deal of that. Just like, honey, let's just talk about, remember when you were running for class president and everybody said that this other kid was more popular, but you still did it and you got elected? You remember that? That is just what you can do on this other situation. So whenever we're afraid of something, it's because it's unknown to us. I don't know if I can do it. It's difficult things. But if we have something to compare it to, then we're like, wait a minute. I have done difficult things before, and I can do it. So it's just showing her that she has done many difficult things already and that she's able to do many more.
So what do you do to help your clients when they are wanting to tell their story, but in a much bigger way, like to the whole world?
Right, and that is really hard because unfortunately we tell ourselves another story. That being an author is like being like Hemingway, like Stephen King, and that being an author looks a very specific way, and if they don't look that way or they don't have the pedigree, and we're in New England and you know how many universities we have, so if you then go to Princeton or Harvard, then you cannot be an author. Well, that's just another story. So what I help them realize is that a writer is someone that writes.
Well, it's interesting you say that because when I started to write my book, I too was telling myself a story. I don't know if I have enough material. How long does the book have to be? Do I have 300 pages of material? You know, who am I to write this book? Is anybody going to read it? Am I going to look silly? Like, we make all these excuses when at the end of the day, I did have a story. I got a lot of stories. I'm going to tell my life. When I tell my life story, it's going to be called It's Okay to Tell It If It's the Truth.
I love
So
it.
I'm just going ahead and putting it out there. So everybody has a story inside of them. How do you help them pull it out?
Yeah, so all the things that you mentioned, all the excuses are there. But what I give myself permission to, every book that I have written is for me first. So I know that at the end of the day, I don't have to publish it if I don't want to, which of course I do. But in that moment when I'm writing, it's just me and my laptop. There's nobody else is allowed in that room. That room is sacred, and I have the freedom to be as creative as I want. I changed my story about that. And I have fun, and I tell it. And then what happens is that I can see old stories, old scripts. I can relive good things, and I can rewrite the story, if you will, and realize, wow, I thought that I didn't know how to do this. In reality, I was just trying to do it like somebody else. So I always say that a book is a gift that the author gives to themselves. And that's why it's so healing, because you're able to go back and see things as they really happen.
And it's the gift that keeps on giving, too.
Right.
So it took you years before you wrote your first book, and then you banged through like 15 of them.
Right.
And now you help other people to not have to sit in that quiet room and figure it out. You actually ask them, what's the process to get somebody to tell their story?
Right, so it's different things. So I either do coaching one-on-one, or I have them in a group setting, and I created a process, because like you said, it took me 20 years
20?
to finish my first book, because I thought, hey, you're already a writer, you should know how to do this. So I kept bullying myself, because I assumed that I should know. And the fact was that I needed help. And I don't know why, at what point in my life I learned that asking for help was not a good thing, or that was a sign of weakness. Story, right? So then I realized it's okay to ask for help. So now the people that come to me, they don't want to be like me. They don't want to wait 20 years. So they come, and then we walk through the process of just start talking. It's a conversation. So we come up with an outline, and we follow that outline. And like you said, sometimes they think I don't have enough, and by the time we finish, they have a lot.
I have 2 books
Yeah,
worth.
exactly.
I have 2 books worth. So it's interesting, the stories that we tell ourselves. I know when I was writing my book, I wasn't really sure which direction I wanted to go, but for them to be able to pull it out, do you have a lot of people that do business books, or is it more personal books, or just a lot of all of it?
Right. No, so I do both. And what I love about business books is that they don't have to be those boring, you're falling asleep, and none of that. If it's a business, if it's your business, it's something that you really care about. So how do you lace, if you will, your story to what you do? Because it relates to it really well. And that makes for a very interesting book. And that's what the books that I write, something that I'm learning, something that I went through, and then I teach principles at the same time.
As a matter of fact, the books that are the best are the ones that weave your personal story into them.
Right.
You know, when we are authentic and genuine and transparent, because people want to learn from people who've already done that which they're teaching.
Right.
So if we're just dictating or pointing a finger, I call it the difference between being a travel agent or a tour guide. You know, a travel agent sits in the office, they've never really gone anywhere, they just give you a brochure and say, here's what I've heard. You know, a tour guide has been there. They know how to get you to the top of the mountain, to the best restaurants, the best views, because they've already been there and done that. So having that story weaved in there is so super important to be able to identify.
Right, and then to say it in a way that you, as the reader, can identify with it. Because what happens is, I'm too close to my story, you're too close to your story. So if you don't work with an expert, you're going to end up with a 250-page book where really there's only about 125 pages worth of content. What I mean by that is, when we tell our story, we tell everything. Well, it was in the corner of Main Street and North Main Street, and there was, it used to be called actually North Street, but and the person is like, what does that even mean? I don't need to know how the name changes of the streets. Just tell me what happened, right? So just keep it simple and just go to the point, because sometimes we waste time and we lose the reader. Just put yourself in their shoes. What would you like to know about that story if you were hearing it for the first time?
Give us an example of one of the books that you've helped to ghostwrite.
Yeah, so I'm working with some guys right now. They're amazing, and they are brilliant, okay, super smart, too smart almost, right? So they're writing this book, and they were doing it by themselves, and they just got stuck because it was so much. They have been studying for over 15 years. So when you are a giver, you want to put everything out there, right? So they just dump all this stuff in, and it was really highbrow stuff. So when I was reading it, I was like, whoa, who is the audience for this book? Because this is really a lot. We have to break this thing down. And the fact that I'm not an expert at what they do makes me even better, because I am going to break things down so the average person can read it and actually gain something from the book. So it's really going in and saying, okay, they use a lot of big words for their field. It's like, no, people don't even know what that means. What does that really mean? And really going in and then taking everything out and saying, that's great for book 2 or book 3. Let's just stick with the first one for now.
Well, experts tend to do that. I know that I used to do that, but I'm much more conscious of it now. When we are an expert at something, we'll use acronyms or words that are industry specific that other people wouldn't understand. And we have to remember what it's like to be brand new. We have to remember what it's like to be new and that people don't get it. Because you're talking to someone that you're like, and you're like, no, I don't know. I don't know. That's why I'm reading your book. That's why I'm here at the seminar. So you help them to dummy it down.
A little bit, yeah. So just break it down, because again, when you're an expert, even though you're trying to remember, it's like ages and ages ago, you really don't remember. So it really is putting you back in that seat. And as I guide the conversation and ask the right questions, they go back in time. They're like, oh yeah, when I first started, and you can see it in their eyes, like they get it. And I love that when it happens.
I love that when that happens too, when you can see somebody's body language and it's like the light really literally goes on over their head. So you do a lot of speaking too, is that right?
I do, yeah.
Tell me about some of your speaking gigs.
Right, so for me, it's all about really storytelling. So I did my first TEDx talk, and I just applied for my second one. Fingers crossed, I'm so excited.
I didn't know we were in the presence of we are royalty.
We are royalty, yes.
The queen of the TED Talk.
That's right. Yeah, so I delivered my first one, and I figure, okay, which one are my favorite ones? Everybody has a favorite TEDx talk or TED Talk, right? So I thought about, if I were to sit there, how would I like to learn this? So I weave stories, and I presented a point, I told a story. Presented another point, and told a story. And then that made it fun for me, because what happens with many speakers is that they just want to get through the material. They finish and they don't remember what they said. They got nervous and they did not connect with the audience. Mm-hmm. So I got really good at speaking when I remember connect with yourself so the audience can connect with you.
So what was your last TED Talk about, and what's the next one going to be about?
Oh, awesome. So the first one was about confidence, really about the confidence to be yourself, which was awesome. And it was really hard when you grew up in a place where you have to be like everybody else, and then you want to be that duckling that wants to be different. And that's what it was about. It was amazing.
And it's about the stories that you tell yourself or the stories that you've heard.
Right.
So for our viewers, it's all about how you are. What story are you telling yourself? What is that voice in your head that you're hearing? I like to think of it as affirmations. We're telling ourselves affirmations all day long.
Right.
It might as well be a positive one. So instead of saying to ourselves, gosh, that was stupid, it's more, hey, how can I make that better? When people ask me how I am, do you remember what I say?
I'm Cami Baker. I think you said your name.
I'm fabulous, fierce, and on fire.
That's right.
Because it's an affirmation.
For yourself.
And I feel that way. And the more that I say it, the more I feel it. When people say, how are you? I say, I'm fabulous, fierce, on fire. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say it one more time. It's a story. Mm-hmm. It's a very quick story that I tell myself, and it helps me to feel fabulous, fierce, and on fire. So your first TED Talk was about confidence.
Right.
And it all goes back to the stories that we tell. Are we telling ourselves how confident we are?
Right, and I love that when you're saying that, not only are you saying it for yourself, but you're teaching me how to treat you, because you already told me. I already think I'm all that in a bag of chips. So I better not mess with you, because I know you have the confidence to tell me if I'm not behaving the right way. See what I mean? So it's just self two purposes. So my second talk that is happening in April, it's about the stories that I learned. This is based on the book, the stories that I learned while I was writing books for other people.
So you have a book coming up that is about the stories. Can you share a couple of them? So what's our whistle for when the book comes out?
I don't know if I can share a couple, but there really are, as I was working on my own book, so I have 15 books, right? And in that process, I was telling many stories. I learned many things about myself that I did not know. For example, my second book about confidence, I had zero when I started, okay? Zero confidence, didn't even get who this crazy person is, right, in the best way possible. And writing the book showed me that I'm amazing, that I don't have to be like everybody else, that even though I heard so many messages and stories about how I did not fit in, and that was not a good thing, that was what I was supposed to be doing anyway. So that rearranged my whole thinking about being different. And that's going to be one of the stories. And I think I have about 35 stories that I'm going to share in the book.
I don't know about you, but I like being different.
Yeah.
I would not want to be normal. I always think, do you remember the movie that Gene Wilder was in years ago, A Young Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Where they have the brain up on the, and it says
Abby
Abby
Normal.
Normal. Abby I always think, I'm so glad that I'm Abby Normal.
Yeah.
How boring it would be to be normal.
Yeah, and limiting.
Limiting.
Because what is normal anyway?
Right? I think about that all the time. People say, well, is it normal? Is he normal? Do you do normal things?
Right.
God, I hope not.
No. Well, what a waste of time. Like, that's what I love about humanity. And this is when we get in trouble, when we're trying to be clones of other people or trying somebody else to be our clone. We're limiting them in about all the things that they can do. In fact, but when we actually embrace that we're different and they're different, we can see them wholly and allow them to be as awesome as they were created to be.
So share with our viewers different ways that they can start telling themselves different stories, the stories they want to live into.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I'm doing for myself these days is I'm telling myself a story from a brand new mind. Okay, so if I'm learning something, for example, I want to learn how to draw, so I'm learning how to do that, and I'm rewriting that story that I'm not creative. So I'm going back to be like, what's a creative person? What is drawing, really? And
What does that mean to you?
What does that mean to me? And why do I think, is it right, is it wrong? What is a person that draws look like? So I'm looking at it from a very, like a brand new perspective. And that allows me to erase anything else that was there and allows me to begin from scratch.
And I would also think that it has to do with noticing what you're thinking to start off with. I remember about 2 years ago, I'm the networking person. I go out and I network. I mean, it's a very small part of it, but the long story short is I'm a communicator. I help people to be seen, be heard, be the authority. So I'm going to this networking thing, and I remember thinking to myself all day, looking at my calendar, oh, I've got to go, I have to go to this thing, etc. And I realized, wait a minute, I teach people about this. I teach them about posturing and packaging and presenting themselves and their mindset. And in that moment, Catherine, I fixed my story around it. I thought, I'm going to be doing this every day. We're all doing it. We're all networking, netwebbing, communicating, meeting other people, whether it's at the store or at the networking event or the kids' baseball game, whatever it is. So instead of going at this from the perspective of I have to do it, I don't want to do it, I got to do it, how about I get to do it?
Yes.
I have the opportunity to do it. I have a car that will get me there. I can fix my hair and look good. Who am I going to meet? Can I be in awe of who am I going to play with in this playground? And I remember that specific event, meeting people in a whole different way, because I went in there with so much life force of just, I get to be here. I don't have to be here. I choose to be here.
Right.
Totally different story.
Totally different. Totally different. And it's, again, how you show up. So telling yourself, I get to, you get to see the gift. So it's no longer it's not something that you have to do. It's not something that you're obligated to do. It is a gift that you get to enjoy and share with other people. Yeah.
And this really reminds me when you're talking about the story that you live into, the story that you tell yourself, the story that you are. We are all actors on a stage, like literally in life. And so whatever story we are portraying is exactly how people see us. Right. I'm at a networking event about a month ago, going around the room doing the dirty 30, the boring 30-second elevator pitch. Ding dong, the pitch is dead. So we're going around, there's like 50 people in the room, and each one of them, well, I was in corporate for 25 years, and what I really think I want to do is be an IT consultant, and it was just one story like that after another. And there were a couple of people that at the very end, I had the opportunity, the blessing of saying, do you mind if I give you just a little input, a little insight? Yeah, you know what? Let's just be. Be that which we say we are. I am an IT consultant. Like, step into your story and live your story. Have you ever heard of landmark education?
Yeah, totally.
The stories that we tell ourselves and the possibilities that we create. So what are some other tips that you would give people on how to create the story and step into it?
Right. So you think one of the things about being is when you're looking at something from a fresh perspective is when you're listening, listen. The whole time you've been speaking, I've been looking at myself as I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I'm listening to her, not thinking about what I'm going to say next. And that's something that's kind of fairly new for me, and I'm really enjoying it because I'm really listening to you. And I don't know if you noticed that I was really attentively looking at you and being present. So part of being a good storyteller is listening to other people. Are they leaning in? Are they saying, are the eyes lighting up? Because that tells you, tell me more. But if the eyes are glazed over, they're looking at their phone, looking at their watch, maybe you bore them and you want to ask them, so what do you think about that? So it's bringing them back. So I call that a pivot. The pivot is just give it back to them and say, what do you guys think about that? Or raise your hands if ever happened to you. Those little things that bring the audience back and lets them know, wow, she cares about how I am taking this.
And be observant about, are you the one that's looking at your watch,
Right.
looking around the room? I am such a student of human nature and of body language. And I do see that you're sparkly, you're attentive, you're here, you're present, you're in the moment. Now, granted, we're on a stage and we're doing a TV show. Would you be this present at the coffee shop? You would be, because you are aware of this. But how often are we with people who, by their own example, are telling the story, I'm bored, I'm not listening to you, I am self-absorbed, I got something better I got to get on to. You know, you're at a networking event, and the whole time you're talking, they're just kind of looking around the room looking for the next best person. So aren't we, I love this topic, aren't we constantly telling a story to people by our actions?
Right. Right. And then also trying to one-up people. That happens all the time. Like just, oh, I have a comeback for that. She just said that. And then by that time, you already checked out because you're just thinking about that comeback. And then by the time you say, the person is like, I said that like 10 minutes ago. Like, what does that have to do with anything? But you checked out because you just wanted to be a one-upper. Or you connected with that thing and that was it. So again, it's being present and then really, really listening to what the person is saying, not what I want to hear. Because many times people say, oh, you know what, Tammy, I really think that when you did that talk, that maybe if you had looked at the audience better or more, that would have connected more. Maybe you hear, oh, Tammy, you tanked. It was awful. Nobody paid attention. And the person was just giving you a nice feedback. So if you were just listening to what she said, hey, it was great. However, if you did this one thing, instead of like trying to interpret what the person is saying, listen to the words and their body language and the evidence. Has that person ever done anything to hurt you? And if you know them and you know that they love you, they're not doing any, they're never going to do anything to hurt you, then you can say, they're trying to help me out. See how different that is? Yeah.
Now that also gets into who are you taking your advice from,
Right.
which is another topic for another day.
Yeah.
Now you speak a lot. Talk to us a little bit about who is a good audience for you? Who do you like to get in front of and really share about the topic of storytelling?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I think I have a couple of different audiences. I have a corporate audience where people are sending out emails or doing presentations or sending out reports and they're landing flat. So that's a great audience for me because I can help them to change the target, their storytelling a little bit in their emails, especially sales teams where they're going in too hard and they're not really connecting with the people that they want to connect with. And then entrepreneurs that either have an amazing business, but they don't have a book yet. And if they want to be seen as an authority in that field, they need to have a book that tells their story, especially if they used to be a mess about the thing that they are teaching. That is the most beautiful thing.
Right.
It's like if you had bad health and now you're a health coach, tell that story. Because it makes me a believer if you were able to turn it around for yourself.
That's why it's so important to be transparent and honest in the beginning. In the beginning of my book, I talk about my alcoholism. I talk about being a single mother. I talk about being broke as a joke and not knowing anyone and moving from one part of the country to another part of the country. Because anybody that I work with, or usually anybody that's reading this book, when they have comments like, well, I don't know the right people. I don't even know where to go to network. I don't have money for a babysitter. Or, whatever the excuses are, I can say, I've said them times 10. Here, read the first chapter. When you get done reading that, come back and tell me what your excuse is, because you know I'm not going to buy it.
Right.
And when the author of the book can show that they have learned by experience, that's when we really want to learn from them. And I just want to make a comment that author versus writer. Author versus writer. So for our viewers, people who want to author a book, they don't have to write it.
They don't have to write it. Yeah. So I work with people and I write their books for them. And again, that's another story of the cliche of don't tell people, it's hush hush. But if you think about it, most athletes, most political figures, they're not writing their book. Yeah, they're not writing any of their books. If you look at even big entrepreneurs, they don't have the time. If you look at how much you charge per hour, if you do the math, right, and how long it's gonna take you to write a book, and you do the math, you're like, it's not worth it to me.
Well, and if it's not your genius zone, get out of that zone. Stay in your genius zone and give that to someone who it is their genius zone.
Right, and that will help you tell it better. Because what happens is I'm working with someone right now, and it's one of those hush-hush situations, which I'm okay with. And he knows his stuff. He's amazing at it, but he doesn't have it down. So he's going to be able to use it in his coaching because now he's going to have his steps that are in his head. He's going to have them black and white right in front of him. But he doesn't know what those steps are. It's like while we walk. If you ask me how I walk, I couldn't tell you. It just happens. My body knows I want to go from point A to point B. So he is amazing at what he does, but he doesn't have it down on a piece of paper. So when we're talking and he said, oh, I just do it. And I'm like, okay, I know how to get him to tell me what I need to hear. And he asked me today, he's like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, because I'm a reader. Right now, I'm a reader. And when you told me that, I realized that I didn't get it. So I needed you to tell me a little more. And then when I feel like you haven't landed there yet, then I ask the same question in a different way. If he was to write his own book, that's where people get stuck. Because they're like, well, how do I go from here? And if he has someone that's experienced, an experienced writer or author helping you in the process, they'll tell you, oh, what happened was that you disconnected from there. Now you have to go back and just tell a story or share that principle in a different way.
I want you to hold your book up and show everybody your book. And for my last comment, I want to talk about how this is the best calling card there is. Ever since even before I had my book, even before it was printed in my hand, I was the author of the forthcoming book, blah, blah, blah. So if you have a story in you, when you have a story in you, let people know it's coming out. And when you have it, oh boy, that's the best calling card. Tell them about your book.
Right. I meet people, and the moment I tell them that I'm an author or somebody else that I'm with tells, oh, she's got 15 books. People stand up a little straighter. They're like, real, like their eyes lit up, and they look at me differently because I'm an expert now. And that's all it means. It means that you have made it, you know a thing or two, and you can teach it. And that's all it is. So if I have a high-end client, right, or a prospective client, I might just say, I'm going to sign this for you, and I'm going to give it to you. Tell me what you think.
That's because you are the queen. The queen of storytelling and the queen of book writing. We at the Happiness Jungle TV show with your queen honors this queen. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.